Hello, my name is Pastor Michael, and for those of you who are joining us on this YouTube video, I want to welcome you. This is Gateway Church. We're a church located here in Staten Island, New York, and this is the first in a series of lessons we're going to be talking about in the Book of Proverbs. This past Sunday here in our church service, we began our new series. We called it Foolproof, living out the wisdom of Proverbs together. And over the next 7 weeks, we're going to have a weekly video discussion, an opportunity for us to once again look at the main points of what we discussed on Sunday, and then an opportunity to look into the Word a little bit deeper and ask some questions. This is meant to be done in a group with other people. We have life groups here at Gateway. And for those of you that are watching that are part of one of our life groups, it's our small group ministry here at a church, as our church. We want to welcome you. We believe that when we get around the Word of God together in groups like this, transformation happens. We worship on Sunday, but we connect throughout the week in our life groups, in our small groups together. And for our life group leaders that are leading this study today, thank you so much. And for anybody that's participating, I'm thankful you're taking the next few moments once again to look into the Word of God together. Now, we started this series once again last Sunday called Foolproof, how to live the wisdom of the Book of Proverbs. And we started by looking at Proverbs chapter 1, verses 1 through 7. It's like the prologue to the whole of the Book of Proverbs. It lays out for us what this book is all about, what it means to live a life of wisdom. It says in verse 2 of chapter 1, "For this is for learning wisdom and discipline, for understanding and insightful sayings, for receiving prudent instructions in righteousness, justice, and integrity, and for teaching shrewdness to the inexperienced." This is what the book of Proverbs is about. Proverbs here we see come from Solomon, this section that we're looking at. Solomon, remember, his prayer before God was that he might gain wisdom. And so how do we define wisdom? Wisdom, according to the scriptures, the Hebrew word is chokhmah. You got to say it a little gutturally, chokhmah. And this is skill in the art of godly living. That's the definition of wisdom we're going to work with. Skill and art. In Exodus chapter 31, we see this example of when Moses is given the instructions on how to put together the tabernacle. The tabernacle was that ancient dwelling place of God with the people of God. And in order for God's presence to be with the people, they had to set up his house, his tabernacle, in a way that enabled them to approach his presence in a way of honor and glorifying to him. Also, it was a way of protecting them from God's holiness in their sinfulness and brokenness. And in Exodus 31, Moses is told by God, "Find men of chokhmah," men of wisdom. Bezalel, one of the chief artisans that crafted the ancient tabernacle, it says of him that he was a man of wisdom, a man of skill, a man that was able to use his hands to take the raw elements of metal and of wood, and from that to craft the beautiful, intricate, beautiful setting of that ancient tabernacle. Skill and art. That's what I want you to think about when you think of the word wisdom. It's skill in the art of godly living. We talked about in our sermon on Sunday, it means being disciplined here in the text. It means being a person of discernment, being able to look at the intricacies of a situation and have insight, like a pitching coach could look at the throwing arm rotation and the spin of the curveball to enable and to encourage his pitchers to pitch better and more effectively. So too, the person of wisdom has discernment about the intricacies of life. And then we talked about discretion, that when we look forward to the best ways to live and act in this world, it takes discretion, it takes insight. It's interesting in the text too that some of the key ways that we are to pray for wisdom in our life is in righteousness, in justice, and in integrity. that we want to ask, what is the wise way forward in these areas of morality, in these areas of importance, of righteousness and justice and integrity in our life, that it takes intentionality. Wisdom, it is skill in the art of godly living. It is not just intellect. Sometimes we think that's what wisdom is. If you are around a smart person, then perhaps they are wise. But no doubt, some of the smartest individuals in your life that still have made decisions in their life that have brought about despair and destruction. It's not about smarts up here. And it's not about street smarts. It's not about being an individual who knows how to navigate a situation, who knows how to navigate the nuances of society and the relationships that they're a part of in order to manipulate them towards their ends and towards their means. That's not what godly wisdom is about. Godly wisdom is seeing the situations before us and asking, how can I honor and obey God faithfully in this situation? The skill and the art of godly living. Another way to look at it is from an example that Proverbs itself uses to describe what wisdom is. And when I recently was studying and reading someone comment on these verses, it helped clarify for me what wisdom is even more deeply. It's found in a section of Proverbs, in Proverbs chapter 30, beginning in verse 24. And listen, to those whom God says are wise. It says, 4 things on earth are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are not a strong people, yet they store up their food in the summer. Hyraxes, or a badger, are not a mighty people, yet they make their homes in the cliffs. Locusts have no king, yet all of them march in ranks. A lizard can be caught in your hands, yet it lives in kings' palaces. I love the metaphor here that the author here is using to describe what wisdom is about. Think of what he's saying. These creatures, small though they are wise in their own domain. That an ant does not have intellect like you or I, but that an ant knows that in order for them to survive the winter, they need to store up food in the summer. That is skill and art for the life of the ant. It talks about the hyrax, which is like a badger type creature, like the size of like a bunny, that would live in the cliffs in the ancient Near Eastern world. It's saying that a badger is not mighty and strong. It's a small little animal, this hyrax, but that it makes its homes in the cliffs. Why? There's protection in the cliffs. There's safety in the cliffs. And if you could keep your home in a location like that, then you could be secure. That is wisdom. That is skill and art in the life of the hyrax. Talks about the locusts. That the locust has no king, that there is not King Locust that steps up and leads them in their path and in their journeys forward. Yet they move together in swarms, and together they're able to conquer. Together they're able to overcome. Together they're able to feed. That's wisdom for the locust. It's skill in the art, in the life of the locust. And lastly, the lizard. I love this one. A lizard, it can be caught in your hands, yet it lives in the king's palaces. It's so small and so tiny, yet it can navigate its way to the most prestigious places on earth and not be caught, and survive and live. That's wisdom, skill, and art in the life of a lizard. What is the author saying? Proverbs is reminding us that to be a person of wisdom, it does not matter how smart you are, does not matter how powerful you are, but if you are to navigate life well, if you are to make your way through the complexities and the challenges, through the uncertainties and the difficulties of life, then you are a person of great wisdom. of discernment and discretion and discipline in your life. And that's the challenge for us as followers of the Lord. Will we be people that seek more than anything else to honor and obey God in how we navigate the complexities of life? That's the question we ended our sermon with this past week. Will we seek to obey and honor God as we navigate the complexities of this life? Because when we do, we demonstrate that our lives are not just about using our powers in order to gain an end that meets ourselves, but that allows us to live lives in this world that are a demonstration that God is at work. I want to be a wise person. Do you know a wise person like this? I can think of so many men and mentors and women in my life, mentors that have encouraged and challenged me to make the right decision. It's the kind of person that you're able to make a phone call. I talked about Pastor Epstein, a man that mentored me for many years, a man that I could call up even now with any complexity situation I'm going through, and with amazing clarity, he's able to help me see it and understand it. You know why? Because for years he's been asking God, how can I navigate the challenges of my life in a way that honors you? I believe all of us want to be people of wisdom in some way. All of us want to be more patient in how we interact with our spouse. All of us want to be more sacrificial and kind to our children. All of us want to figure out how best to lead in our businesses. All of us see the injustices and the challenges of this world, and we see the sadness and the depravity in our world, and we ask God, how can I be a person that brings about life and light and the truth of God in it? That takes wisdom. It takes wisdom to be able to know how best to proceed. And back in chapter 1 of Proverbs, as we end our first lesson together today, we see that there's a beginning point for us. There's a posture that we all need to have if we're going to seek after wisdom in our life. And it says in verse 7 of chapter 1, the fear of the Lord. That's the beginning of knowledge. That's where wisdom is found. That if we're to be people of true wisdom in our life, that it can't be divorced of God. That as followers of him through Jesus Christ, that we need to live in fear of God. And fear in the scriptures is not about being afraid and running in the other direction. It's about reverence and awe. That God, everything I do, my life, my breath, God, it's in reverence and awe of you, Lord. I need wisdom. You are a God of amazing awe and ability and glory and reverence. And Lord, I humbly ask you, guide me. The scriptures in the New Testament tell us, if any of you lacks wisdom, ask of God, who gives to all generously. God's a generous God in giving out wisdom. Where do you need wisdom today? Where do you need wisdom in your relationships? You're going to get ready to talk about this in your groups. Do you need wisdom with your family? Do you need wisdom as you make some serious life choices? Or do you need wisdom about moving or staying, about when to act, or about what to share? Do you need wisdom on how to manage your purity and how to make sure you're seeking God in your sexuality? Do you need wisdom in how you interact and serve in your neighborhood? There's so many ways that we need the skill and art of godliness as we navigate the challenges of this world. Like a ship at sea, how can we take it to the port in which we need to go? We know in the New Testament, ultimately the promise is that Jesus himself is the true wisdom of God. And we'll talk about that as a little bit as well in the coming weeks in a sermon and in a study. But in 1 Corinthians 1:24, it tells us that those who are called Jews and Greeks, Christ is the power of God and the wisdom of God. And that the weakness of Jesus shows the strength of God. That ultimately, as we seek to live our life in the skill and the art of navigating it according to God's way, we look to Jesus. the true wisdom of God that turns upside down the wisdom of this world. The wisdom of this world says, get what you can, no matter what. But the wisdom of God says, as we choose weakness, we can as well find strength. We're going to explore that more in the coming weeks. But thank you for joining us in this first study session. You're going to see that we've already sent you as well some questions of reflection. We'll try to put it as well in the notes section here on YouTube. An opportunity for you now to get around in groups and start asking yourselves, how have you defined wisdom? What does it mean to have skill in art? What about this metaphor about lizards that Pastor Mike was talking about? And then how can you in your life, even now, begin to seek to honor and obey him no matter what? It's a witness. And ultimately, it's a testimony to the true wisdom of God in Jesus himself.